surrender. And I promise you will die quickly.
Alright guys, welcome back to the next installment of my Mastery of the Force series. Today we're going to cover General Grievous. Now, he might not necessarily be a Force user like everybody else, but he's got those lightsabers, and he is definitely one of my favorite players to use in the game. Sometimes I'll start off as Vader, or you'll see me start off as another villain, but depending on the blaster to saber ratio or circumstance on the map, sometimes you guys switch to the General. He is definitely the disruptor, and probably one of the more balanced villains in the game in terms of just being able to handle all sorts of combat and scenarios. So we'll get into all that, but I appreciate all the support. Make sure you check out my first episode of this series that covered Darth Vader, so make sure you check that out. But for right now, we're going to get back to the General. Alright, so to start out, we'll cover General Grievous's abilities. So some of my favorite stuff to do on this game, the thrust surge, of course. So being able to lunge from a distance and be able to stab your opponent. You have the unrelenting advance, where Grievous will start up his 4 lightsabers, and you can use that multiple ways, which we'll cover in a little bit. But you can use it to deflect attacks, whether it's sabers or blaster fire, or to be aggressive and move forward. And then we have the Claw Rush, which is probably the coolest thing in the game, being able to go down. I'm sure if you guys saw the movie Attack of the Clones, you saw Grievous doing that Claw Rush, trying to escape Kenobi throughout that movie. But yeah, he kind of turns himself into like a spider and starts clawing away. So that's where you guys hear me always talking about taking ankles, because obviously he's down there on ground level, and that's what he's going for. Like with the Force users, obviously, you have your Force abilities, and then you have your manual combat with the sabers. But for Grievous, not being a Force user, they've kind of embedded his multiple abilities within these abilities themselves. If that makes any sense, and I'll try to explain it. So like for the Unrelenting Advance, if you start that up, let's say somebody like Lando throws their grenade on the ground that's supposed to freeze you in place. That Unrelenting Advance can block, or at least progress through some of those different abilities. So for instance, like a Kenobi Force Push or Luke Force Push, if you're doing your Unrelenting Advance, you can go right through it. It's not going to cause you any problem. You can continue doing your attack. So that's very useful, especially like I said, dealing with blaster players where you have somebody like Lando that can freeze you in place with his grenade. You have to move your angle to the left and right to make sure the sabers actually hit. Sometimes it doesn't work right if you're just walking forward, so you kind of have to angle it left and right, and you'll see that in some of the clips I'm posting here, just to give you an example. And that can be useful for trying to be aggressive, deflecting blaster fire back to people. You'll see me often do this with Leia when she starts up the rapid fire, because Grievous cannot block blasters to save his life. I mean, he can deflect them, but it drains his stamina significantly quick, and there's really no way to get around it outside of jumping or trying to maneuver away from it. So easiest thing to do, if the Unrelenting Advance is available, start that up, and then you can deflect some blasters, and that's not going to bother your stamina. Now, the Unrelenting Advance is kind of funny, because people can casually step backwards out of it. And as I'm doing my advance, they don't even turn around to sprint. They literally just walk backwards, and that's quicker than Grievous using his 4 lightsabers and walking forward. Doesn't make any sense to me how that equates out the way it does. I guess it's so the Unrelenting Advance isn't too overpowered. Hey, just be mindful, people can walk out of it, so you kind of have to be timely when you're going to use it. Maybe like if your back's up against the wall, you have a lot of people in front of you, do that then. You can cover yourself a little bit better. Obviously, when you have that advance going, people are going to try to jump over you or roll through you, because people can roll through 4 lightsabers. Doesn't make any sense. It happens all the time, though. And obviously, they're trying to get behind you so you can do more damage. Now, the Claw Rush, that is definitely a useful move for, escaping out of situations, or to be aggressive and try to take some ankles, get people knocked down, and that can be useful for trying to pair off other abilities. With the Claw Rush, you can get knocked out of it. Han's grenade will explode, and that will knock you out of your Claw Rush. I have had some instances where, if Anakin was standing behind me, he could force pull me out of the Claw Rush. Now, I've tried to do that before, and it didn't work. But of course, not everything is equal on this game. I've had stuff happen to me that when I try to replicate it, it doesn't work out. All right, and we'll kind of jump back into more of these abilities as we talk about the star cards. So we're going to go over the star cards. So I'll kind of talk about each one and how useful it is, and then you see the 3 that I use for myself, so I'll talk about those as we get to them. All right, so first you have the Beating Heart, which is just max health. You may find this more useful than Hero Supremacy, but in terms of heroes versus villains, you'll have a lot of maneuverability, and Grievous is pretty good at securing his kills. That's kind of one of the main things I like about Grievous, is that with the Saber players, there's too much that can happen. Like, Vader can force choke someone, but then he may drop them. However, if you're doing a thrust surge, if that lands, you're guaranteeing your damage there. And if the health is low enough, you're guaranteeing your kill. So you probably wouldn't need the max health for heroes versus villains combat, but if you're doing hero supremacy, a lot more blaster fire to deal with, and like I spoke on before, Grievous is not the best at deflecting blasters, so you'll probably find it more useful there. Sith trained, so this gives you extra damage on your lightsaber attacks, but drains your stamina. I'm not one that wants to do anything that's going to drain the stamina, because just like I literally was just talking about deflecting blasters, why give yourself an ability where you're going to lower your stamina, and then when you try to block something, the stamina is already getting more diminished? Not necessarily worth it. So, it is some increased damage, but you'll be able to find more use out of some of the other star cards. All right, so the first one, and this one here, this is pretty much automatic for any Grievous player. I've had some time running without this one. I'll talk about that in a second, but this is Jedi Killer. Like I said, every Grievous player should have this one. You can target enemies further away using your thrust surge, and you see when it's maxed out, 50% more reach. Now, obviously, blaster players, they can shoot from across the map. For the Saber players, outside of maybe Kylo's Force Pull, this probably has the most reach out of anything else in the game. So you definitely want to have this on. Anybody jumping, you've heard me say it, don't jump around Grievous, because if you're in the radius of this and somebody jumps, that thrust surge is going to target them, and it's going to catch them every time. I've had very minimal times where somebody was airborne, I did a thrust surge and it missed. And the times that's happened, it was like environmental, like, playing on Trip a Hive, they jumped past a rock and I wasn't able to catch up in time with the thrust surge. So something like that could happen, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to land that attack. And having that increased reach, that's major. You got to have it. I did have some time early on playing this game where I didn't use this. It's like I had maxed it out and used it, took it off trying to use some of the other abilities, and you can kind of get away with it if you're doing like duels or heroes versus villains, if you're playing on a smaller map. But in a general sense, you're going to want this ability. Then you have the Cowardly Retreat. I don't know if I call it cowardly, but while Grievous is doing his claw rush, he gets damage reduction. Once again, once this is maxed out, you get 90% damage reduction. So you got to think, when you're doing your claw rush, you're trying to go out of blaster player, they're shooting you, all that damage is reduced. And like the example I gave earlier where Han can throw a grenade, knock you out of your claw rush, this is going to help you preserve some of that extra health. So that damage reduction is still in play, even though it knocks you out of the animation. So you'll definitely get some use out of having this ability. Definitely want to have that on there. Flesh is weak. For every 10% health missing, Grievous gains damage reduction, but his health regeneration speed is halved. This is kind of one of those intricate perks. I just don't see a reason to have it. The damage reduction is helpful, but likewise, you see there's other abilities you can use to reduce your damage, and as you get used to playing as Grievous, you're going to use those abilities. So like I was talking about earlier with the Unrelenting Advance, I'm not going to put an ability like Flesh is Weak on when I can deflect the blasters with that and then escape with my claw rush, or there's other ways to work around this. So this is one of those, it can be useful, and you see it's progressive, so it's for every 10% of health missing, so it's a progressive perk. If you guys know more about this one, let me know. Maybe it can be more useful from my understanding of it. Line up weaklings. After one enemy is hit, Grievous deals more damage with Claw Rush. Once again, this is one of those that could be very useful on Hero Supremacy because you got a lot of people lined up together. Doing the 4v4 lobbies, there's times where you'll hit multiple people on the Claw Rush, so that can help. And obviously, you'll deal more damage to the second person you hit, but oftentimes, you're going to be you could be in more 1v1 situation, or, you do your Claw Rush, somebody jumps out of it, and then you're only hitting one person, then you're not getting the max benefit of this perk. Circumstantial, probably more for Hero Supremacy, but I wouldn't recommend it as much for heroes versus villains. Deadly Slashes. Grievous inflicts more damage with Unrelenting Advance. Don't do this. It's too easy for people to get out of Unrelenting Advance. Unless you have them pinned somewhere, people can jump over you. Like I said, people can roll through these attacks. All the blaster players can roll through 4 lightsabers. I just don't understand how the game lets an animation like that go. I understand they need to be able to evade attacks, but you shouldn't be able to roll through 4 lightsabers in front of you. That should knock you backwards and take some damage if you try to do it. But for whatever reason, they let people roll through it, and the Saber players can just jump over it. Then you're trying to turn and catch up. And oftentimes, if they get behind you, you're going to jump out of that Unrelenting Advance Advance so you can start blocking, or you can use another ability. So once again, I wouldn't invest all your stock into Unrelenting Advance like that. It's just not worth it. Which brings us over to Ceaseless Assault. Grievous takes less damage while Unrelenting Advance is active. Once again, you're just not going to find that much use out of this. Now, maybe more on Hero Supremacy. You may find it more useful in those modes, but when you're playing heroes versus villains, I mean, if somebody jumps behind you, you're going to stop your Unrelenting Advance. So obviously, you can reduce a little bit of damage, but then people can just roll right through it again, start shooting you in your back, and it's just you're fighting against yourself in these controls. Why do that? Just use your stock, use your abilities on your Claw Rush and your Thrust Surge, which takes us over to Momentum. Thrust Surge deals more damage. Now, once again, if you have your Jedi Killer, so you have that increased range, why not maximize your damage output on it? Because sometimes this is going to be your killing hit. I mean, if your moves are going right and you force a Saber player to jump trying to get away from you and your Thrust Surge is ready, that extra 40% damage when this is maxed out could be that killing hit. Definitely would recommend having this on there just to maximize what the Thrust Surge can do for you. But yeah, that's his ability. So like I said, for mine, I have the Jedi Killer, Cowardly Retreat, and Momentum. Alright, so we've talked about Grievous's abilities and his star cards already, but I just wanted to come back and talk about some of the other nuances to his abilities, because I know I really went in on Unrelenting Advance, but there's still some other stuff with Claw Rush and Thrust Surge. For the Claw Rush, one of the cool things with Claw Rush is that you can manipulate someone and force them to stand back up when you've already knocked them down. Well, the idea behind it is that when you force someone to stand back up from the Claw Rush, it oftentimes stumbles them because the game is like technically blocking for them because they're already down and then you're hitting them again. So it forces them to get up, and they normally stumble when that happens. So when they're stumbling, obviously that kind of makes you can't move for like 2 or 3 seconds. And then Grievous should be able to get back up out of the Claw Rush and either land an attack, or he can start up one of his other abilities and so forth. Can be useful because, like I said, it makes the person stumble when they stand, and if you're able to get up in time from that happening, you can at least get one swing off before the person starts jumping. And if they do jump, you got that Claw Rush ready to go. Now, the Thrust Surge is kind of buggy on this game because I've had times where I'm aiming at one person that's closer to me. There's a person standing a couple steps behind them. The Thrust Surge hits the person that's in front of me, but it also targets the person behind as well. I don't know why it does that. I think that's just a bug in the game. So you do your Thrust Surge, just watch it. Sometimes it may hit somebody else that's standing in close proximity. Obviously, if they're standing on top of each other, it'll hit. And then somebody 3-4 feet behind is getting hit as well. And then maybe you might be able to go target them and get a quick kill. Going back to the Claw Rush, generally you'll see yourself only hit somebody once in the process of doing a Claw Rush, but if you knock someone down and they stand up, if it's about 3 seconds after they stand back up, you can technically hit them a second time with the Claw Rush. The timing just has to be right. So you pretty much have to hit somebody at the very start of the ability. Yeah, so that can be useful. So you can technically do 2 Claw Rush attacks on a person if you hit them immediately when the Claw Rush starts. So if you've already doing your Claw Rush and you're halfway done with that attack, you're not going to hit them a second time. You're not going to have enough time. So it has to be literally like right when the Claw Rush starts, hit them. And then if they get up, they start walking around again, you can come back and Claw Rush a second time. All right, so we talked about Grievous's abilities and his star cards. Let's go ahead and get into some action with them. The General out here on the Kloss lands, getting stuck on the map. And that's something you can always expect to happen from time to time. Alright, so you saw there we just linked a Thrust Surge to a Claw Rush, one of those combination with the abilities like we were talking about before. Alright, so like we said before, starting off with the Unrelenting Advance to advance towards the Blaster player. If your stamina ever gets really low, use that Unrelenting Advance to your advantage. And allow that to build your stamina back up while you're still able to put out some damage output. You saw there, that was the sharp shot from Lando again. So you saw that completely drain Grievous' stamina. It wouldn't do that to the other Saber players, it's just Grievous.
Crush them. Make them suffer.
This is why I call Grievous the ultimate disruptor. Just come in, take everybody's ankles, knock everybody down. You can help your teammates like that, or at least set up where they can start to do some of their abilities as well. You see right there, using the Unrelenting Advance just to block the blaster, so don't worry about trying to block yourself. Trying to do the block animation, use Unrelenting Advance for it if it's not on recharge. Take those ankles and be precise with your hits. You'll be good to go. And she's chucking those grenades over. So if you're doing the unrelenting advance and Leia's throwing grenades, there's nothing you can do. Like, you're going to tank that damage. So you could put that modifier on with the unrelenting advance damage, reduced damage. But like we talked about before, it's not as worth it. Now everybody, all the Saber players can block that retribution if you do it right. And same thing with the blaster players, they can roll out of it. But we'll cover that more when we get to the Mastery of the Force for the Chosen One. We'll have to see. So far, we've done back-to-back villains, so we'll see if we take to the light side, or maybe we might cover all the villains first. I'll keep doing the polls as we go each, from week to week. We have several more people to do.
You chose the wrong side.
Yeah, that time I just got kind of stuck there. That was a good move on their part. But now it's time for a little bit of revenge, because a little revenge never hurt nobody. Y'all know the deal. So you see, you can block a claw rush directly in front of you, like Anakin did there. So I mean, it's telling you to try to maneuver behind them. And of course, if they shift, or if they shift forward, that can help them to block it. And this just takes, playing the game. Rey's going to switch her abilities. Everything's reverse. So once you play the game long enough, it's not going to bother you too much. You see, I just kept aiming. And that was doing that claw rush twice. So you see, we caught Luke very early on with it, kept going around, and then enough time went by where I was able to do a second attack, and that one unfortunately killed him. And there goes her ankles. I'm telling y'all, man, y'all want to play with the General. I'm telling you. He handles every situation. But, of course, the map can be difficult. Like, you've seen plenty of times as I've been playing this, I'll do a thrust surge, I get stuck on something. It is what it is. It really happens a lot on Mos Eisley, that Tatooine map. There's a lot of chairs and a lot of stuff there. I think maybe like my 4th episode, one of my earliest episodes in Battlefront 2 was specifically just referencing that, where Grievous is just getting stuck on everything in the map. It happens. Especially with the thrust surge.
I promise you will die quickly.
This is for my friend.
Cough it up a little bit of showmanship never hurt nobody. I try not to taunt. I think that was just a control. I was trying to set up the next attack there. I don't taunt on here. I just get revenge when people taunt at me. Because the game's too buggy. Like, I don't know how you can sit here and taunt at someone knowing there's like a 1 health glitch that can keep people alive when they shouldn't be alive. And that never got fixed, and they're not updating the game anymore. It's a lot of buggy stuff that can happen, so I don't know why people bother taunting on here. This is not the game for it. At least if it was running smoother, I'd be a little more understanding, but not as buggy as this game is. That was a good time to rush attack from Luke. So he caught me before I could get that thrust surge off. And now we're going back up to take some more ankles. Went through that, and you see I just went right through his repulse. Let's take advantage of it. Yeah, a map like this, you guys see it often. Plus lands, the Crate Abandoned Rebel Outposts, where all the blaster players go to the edge of the map. Maps like those, Grievous is the best suited, at least in my opinion. If I got better with Kylo, then I could probably make him work a little bit better there, but Grievous is surefire. A map like Kashyyyk, I probably wouldn't use Grievous as much unless you're staying in the middle areas. It's easy to fall off the map there. And Grievous's jumping on here is kind of sketchy to begin with, so yeah, I would be kind of hesitant to use him on a map like that. But anything wide open, you can make it work. I've seen some people have great matches on Jabba's Palace with Grievous, and I mean, once again, depending where you're fighting at, it can be cool. There's a lot of areas to get stuck on in that map, so it's not something I would necessarily choose to play Grievous on. But wide maps, large maps, to medium range, those will work fine.
All hail the Dark Lord of Kill Streaks.
All right.
Got the Skywalkers over here slicing and dicing away. Take their ankles. So I made Luke stumble because I got back around there. Unfortunately, I couldn't get another hit off. And that's going to do it for that round. One more thrust surge.
As Maul performs the final kill of the match.
First place, good to go. All right, the Trip Hive on Geonosis, another one of my main Grievous maps. I mean, all the villains work here fine, but Grievous definitely just, and it's a wide open space, a lot of places where people will jump, and you can take advantage of that with that thrust surge.
The light is immediately snuffed out.
Just don't jump around Grievous. Don't jump. And here you go. You gotta go left or right with that unrelenting advance to make sure it actually hits. Just standing there in front, it may not do it. It may not. So you gotta kind of go left to right. You don't have to go too far. I mean, just make sure he's alternating. That's the main thing. And then there's just too many abilities once. It is what it is. And of course the blaster makes its way out there. Get that thrust surge. Make sure that's why you want to have as much reach on the thrust surge as you have, so that you can capitalize on moments like that. Feels like it should do a little more damage, and you saw he rolled right underneath the unrelenting advance. Once again, I understand the blaster players need to have escapability, but the game's not going to be equal where a blaster player is just as strong as a Saber player, especially one that's able to control the Force. So like watching Han roll under Grievous, he has 4 lightsabers going. It's just, I mean, it doesn't, how many lightsabers are going? You're rolling under someone that has a lightsaber on the ground. Like, that's kind of crazy. I know they have to have an animation, but yeah, it's definitely weird to see.
The pacifists are crushing the
He just used his
competition.
grenades. I'm going to hit him with that thrust surge, catch him off guard. Wait for it. I was expecting him to sprint. Sometimes it will immediately after that. All right, keep it moving. So you see Grievous has that jump attack. So just like all the Saber players, you know, you can do a small jump and then do your attack. You'll see some people, and I feel like they're probably playing on keyboard when they do it because it's difficult to do on the controller like I play on. But you'll see they'll do several little jumps, you know, just doing A and then doing their swing. So you can do it like normally like up to like 3 times. So I've seen some people do that, but it's a little bit tricky with the controller. So it just depends on how you're playing. You may be able to take advantage of it. That's a good way to get some extra damage on someone. You know, just like you see, you know, Vader dashing forward with that attack. You know, same deal. Animation is just a little bit different for Grievous since he's dual wield. Good old Leia. You know, that blaster has to come out there, so use a little bit of unrelenting advantage. You see she rolled right under it. Again, literally right underneath it. And that damage reduction, I didn't take any damage off that blaster, but I ended up getting out of the claw rush. And this was stupid on my part. Like I said, unrelenting advance is not going to tank any of that damage from those grenades, unless you have the modifier on it. So something like that, you want to just, you know, get out of that animation and jump, try to get away from the grenade. You know, Leia's will just throw grenades on the ground, and there's no damage to them for throwing a grenade on the ground. Honestly, this game is so interesting how they have stuff laid out for the blaster players to be able to be competitive. It's just interesting. Move back around to Anakin. Whoop. Gonna catch him with that. Several feet ahead of him. I don't know how that worked out. It's several feet above him. It doesn't matter. You get that kills. Now you want to be mindful doing that thrust surge, because if somebody's standing there watching you about the thrust surge and they're already blocking, most of the time they'll just parry block the hit and then you'll just take unnecessary damage. So kind of be wise about it, but at the same time it's a timing thing. If you've already started the animation and someone starts blocking afterwards, it is what it is. I mean, Just try to maneuver out of it as best you can. Caught him on the tail end of that claw rush.
The dying will continue until your killing improves by 50%.
Alright, sometimes you just gotta loop back around and reset and see if somebody forgets about you. Get your abilities back up and keep it going. I was trying to get Anakin here. I saw his health was really low, but too many abilities at once, and that grenade took off some health. Who knows where he detonated it behind me. It still did quite a bit of damage.
A historic game by the Master.
There's that grenade knocking me out of the claw rush. Sometimes it can happen on the map as well. If you go off of a surface, you'll immediately exit out of the claw rush, even if you're not even trying to. It can still happen. Grievous be coughing.
Guess we're not talking. Steady!
Trying to bait the attacks out. First surge is ready. You know this Anakin gotta learn. Stop jumping around my Grievous. Thought he would have learned by now. He'd been jumping all match just about. Alright, you see Grievous is good for ambushing like that, so, and I mean, Yoda didn't see it. He had no chance of blocking it or getting away from it. You gotta take advantage like you can. And see, once again, I wasn't trying to exit out of the claw rush, but he went up on a rock and then immediately left out of it. I'm not sure why he does that, but it's just a game. And jump out the radius of that grenade. And once again, you see that 90% damage reduction with the claw rush. I didn't lose any damage when he was shooting me. And unfortunately, started shooting right out, and then you're gonna taunt. Okay, Han, you guys don't learn. He's gonna find out though. You don't, Grievous. General don't like that. Don't taunt Grievous. Kenobi just getting dragged around like a rag doll. So you see, that time I got out of the unrelenting advance soon enough, but then my claw rush stopped because I got off of a flat surface. So I mean, probably should have been able to keep going forward, but it is what it is.
Anger and hate seize the day as Kylo Ren brings the match.
Alright, that's going to do it for this Mastery of the Force episode for General Grievous. Hope you learned a lot and are ready to go out there and dominate on the battlefront like I do. Hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know if there's anything I missed or you'd like to discuss in the comments, and I'll catch you guys next Friday for the next episode.